She laughed and said, "Oh, he's just my roommate," in front of her boss, after I paid most of her bills, bought her dress, and drove her there. I didn't argue. I just smiled. 2 weeks later, she came home to an empty apartment and a lease that no longer existed. I'm 33, and until a few weeks ago, I was living with my girlfriend. Well, now ex-girlfriend, Jenna, 30. We'd been together a little over 3 years, lived together for 2. We met through a hiking group on Meetup. She was loud, funny, full of energy. The kind of person who lit up a room, even when you didn't ask her to. At the time, that energy was magnetic. I was quieter, more reserved. Ran a small carpentry and remodeling business that kept me plenty busy but paid decently. Jenna worked as a freelance photographer, mostly events and weddings, with some corporate gigs sprinkled in. She was talented, no doubt, but her income was inconsistent at best. When we first moved in together, we had the classic couple talk about splitting everything down the middle: rent, groceries, utilities. But it quickly became clear that wasn't going to happen. She was often behind on her half. Sometimes it was a slow month, or she had to replace gear, or a client ghosted. I picked up the slack, without complaint. I was doing all right financially, and I cared about her. At the time, I thought that's just what you do when you love someone. Over time, though, something shifted. At first, it was small. She'd make these offhand comments about how I didn't get the corporate world, or that her friends from college could never date a guy who wore work boots. Jokes, she said. I didn't laugh, but I didn't fight her on it either. I kept supporting her, even helped her put together her online portfolio, bought her a new camera lens one birthday, and was always the one paying when we went out. She never really acknowledged it. Not out of malice, I think. More like she just expected it. Then came the lead up to her company's annual networking event. It was for a tech firm she'd been doing contract work with, photographing internal events and product launches. This was a big opportunity, she said. Executives would be there. She was hoping to land a permanent in-house role. I wanted to support her. I offered to help however I could. I paid for a new dress she had bookmarked for weeks, scheduled and paid for her hair and nails, and even covered the cost of getting her best photos professionally printed for her portfolio. No thank you. Not even a nod. But again, I brushed it off. That night, I drove her to the venue. I'd taken the evening off just to help her prep, even ironed her dress shirt because she was running late. She looked stunning, and I told her so. She barely said anything, just seemed distracted. Right before we walked in, she turned and said, "Hey, just so you know, if anyone asks who you are, can you just say you're my roommate or something? I just really want this job, and, appearances." I laughed, thinking she was joking, but her face was completely serious. I said, "Wait, you want me to pretend we're not dating?" She shrugged. "It's just for tonight. I just need to look independent and polished, It's a corporate culture thing." I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice or make a scene. I just nodded and followed her in. Inside, I helped her carry her gear, tripods, portfolio case, all of it. She was immediately surrounded by coworkers and managers. One guy, probably mid-40s, walked over and said, "Hey Jenna, and who's this?" She laughed, a little too loudly. "Oh, him? Just my roommate. He helps me carry stuff sometimes." I remember standing there, holding her equipment, wearing the watch I bought for her birthday, after paying for nearly everything she needed that week, and she called me her roommate. I smiled, said nothing, and walked back to the car. The drive home that night was silent. She didn't come out right away, probably spent a while schmoozing with the execs and getting compliments on her independent woman vibe. I just sat in the car, hands on the wheel, staring at the steering column. I wasn't angry, not in the way people usually describe it. It felt more like a weight, something heavy sitting in my chest. She finally slid into the passenger seat, humming like nothing had happened. "Thanks for waiting," she said, checking her phone and typing something with a smile. "Yeah," I said quietly and drove. She didn't ask how I felt, didn't bring up what she said, and I didn't mention it. Not that night, not the next morning, not for the next 13 days. It wasn't about being passive-aggressive. I just needed time to process. I paid the upcoming rent, cleaned the apartment like usual, went to work, ate dinners alone on the couch while she edited her photos in the bedroom. She still acted like everything was normal, texting me about groceries, showing me pictures of new lighting gear she wanted, asking if I could help her write a pitch email to a potential client. Each day that passed, I felt less like a boyfriend and more like a live-in assistant with financial benefits. But that moment at the event, her words, the way she laughed, it stayed with me. Just my roommate. Like none of it mattered. Like 3 years meant nothing when she needed to appear more put together in front of strangers. So I started making plans. Quiet ones. First, I backed up everything that was mine. Years of photos, tax records, personal docs. I moved most of my tools and valuable equipment to my workshop. Told her I was just reorganizing the storage space. She didn't even ask why. Then I canceled the internet. It was under my name. When she asked about it buffering one night, I said there was an outage. She shrugged it off. I let the lease run its final weeks without renewing. The landlord was a friend of mine from a previous project. I told him the situation. He understood. I paid the final month and asked for my half of the security deposit back. He said sure. She didn't notice me taking my things slowly, bit by bit. Clothes, books, my laptop charger, some dishes. If she noticed the place getting a little emptier, she never said anything. Probably too focused on her work or just used to me handling things in the background. The tipping point, the moment that sealed it for me, came on the 12th day. We were in the kitchen. She was eating cereal out of a measuring cup because all the bowls were gone. I'd taken them. She chuckled and said, "God, this place is so disorganized. You should really clean more." I nodded, said nothing. Then she added, laughing, "You're lucky to have a roommate like me. Most people would kill to live with someone this low maintenance." I paused, looking at her, really looking. She wasn't joking. She genuinely believed I was lucky, that I should be grateful for being tolerated. That was the last time I stayed the night. The next morning, I left the apartment key on the kitchen table, picked up the last of my things, and walked out. I left early, around 6:30 a.m. on a Friday. She was still asleep. I didn't slam the door, didn't write a dramatic note. Just left the key on the table next to her cereal-stained measuring cup and walked out with the last of my boxes. Everything else, furniture, dishes I didn't care about, a throw blanket she loved but never paid for, I left behind. The lease officially ended the next day. That afternoon, I got a call from my landlord saying she tried to drop off a rent check. He told her the lease was already canceled, had been for a week. She looked confused, apparently. Thought it was a mistake. I knew she'd be home by 7 p.m. I didn't want to be there to see it, but I couldn't help imagining the moment she'd walk through that door. The lights wouldn't turn on. I had shut off the power account 2 days earlier. The internet was gone. Half the furniture was missing. My things were gone. Even the fridge was empty, since I'd thrown out anything that could rot. And there was a note, folded neatly on the kitchen counter. Just 6 words. "You introduced me as your roommate." She blew up my phone around 7:20 p.m. At first, just texts. "Where are you? What the hell is going on? Are you serious right now?" Then came the calls. Voicemail after voicemail. Her voice got shakier each time. The first few were angry. Then came confusion. Then desperation. "You can't just leave like this." I was under pressure that night. It didn't mean anything. I was trying to be professional. "Can we just talk?" I didn't reply. By midnight, she'd sent me a wall of text. Apologies, justifications, little jabs thrown in like emotional grenades. "You're acting like a child. You never understood what I was trying to build. This is exactly why I didn't want to introduce you as my boyfriend." That one stung. Not because it was harsh, but because it confirmed everything. I blocked her the next morning. I didn't want to play ping pong with guilt and blame. I wasn't interested in watching her cycle between regret and self-defense. I had already grieved the relationship, quietly, alone. In those 2 weeks, she was too busy pretending I didn't exist. Since then, I've been staying in a small rental near my workshop. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine. Quiet, clean, no tension, no unpaid bills, no unspoken resentment lingering in the kitchen air. I still think about her sometimes. Not out of longing. More like when you touch a sore tooth with your tongue, just to see if it still hurts. The thing is, I didn't leave because she embarrassed me. I left because she erased me, slowly, piece by piece, until she could no longer see what I brought to her life. And when someone shows you that you're invisible, when they think no one's watching, it doesn't go away. I wasn't her boyfriend in that room. I was her errand boy, her rent safety net, her occasional therapist, her fading background character. So I gave her what she asked for. Now she has her wish. She doesn't have a boyfriend. She has no roommate either.